Hello and welcome to Ponant's Kimberley Big Five event. We usually associate the Big Five with iconic animals in Southern Africa. Today, while their borders are closed, we're giving you our version of the Kimberley's Big Five. And it's not all about the animals. Everything about the Kimberley is big. Big landscapes and wildlife, big skies with arguably the best sunrises and sunsets in the world. And the Kimberley itself is bigger than 75% of the world's countries. And we're bringing in the big guns, experts with a combined expertise and experience of over 150 Kimberley Coast Expeditions between them, Mick, Fogg and Sandrine Erwin-Rose. Tonight, you'll hear from Mick and Sandrine about what it is that makes the Kimberley so special and what is the Kimberley's Big Five, according to them. My name's Craig Farrell, National Business Development Manager at Ponant. We'll cover what expeditions we have available in 2021, and there's also an exclusive offer to thank you for joining us. Before I welcome Mick and Sandrine, here's a short film to give you a taste of the Kimberley. This might be the perfect opportunity to grab yourself a wine. Isn't that just incredible scenery? I'll now welcome you to our two Kimberley experts who will be sharing their wealth of knowledge tonight. Mick Fogg and Sandrine Erwin-Rose, welcome to both of you.
Thanks, great to be here.
Sandrine, we can't wait to hear from you a little bit later on tonight about some of the different destinations and itineraries that we have in 2021 that we haven't done before, and in conjunction with National Geographic expeditions, which we're really excited about. We're going to start with you, Mick, whose love affair really started with the Kimberley over 20 years ago. Firstly, before we get into the destination, can you tell us a little bit about your role at Ponant?
Yeah, thanks very much, Craig. It's great to be joining you this evening, even though we're miles apart, mate. It's always nice to see you a smiling face, and welcome to all those that are out there joining us tonight. So, yeah, my name's Mick, Expedition Manager for Ponant. Lucky enough to start with the company back in 2014. And as the expedition manager, my job is to basically design the itineraries for our expedition voyages between sort of Japan all the way down to Antarctica, Indonesia, right the way across to Rapa Nui. So covering the whole Asia Pacific region. And part of that is to try and create unique experiences. And it's something that we really strive to achieve. You know, going out and finding lesser known places and trying to get the best that we can from those locations, because we want to create unforgettable moments. And that's what everyone's searching for when they're going to get back to traveling, hopefully in the next few months. And one of the things I really like about what we do in remote areas is the fact that we work really closely with local people, empowering them to get involved in tourism, you know, and that evolves into us being able to create that wonderful ecologically and culturally sustainable tourism that we stand for.
Brilliant. And obviously your career's taken you all over the world, but the Kimberley's always been particularly special to you. Why is that?
Oh, look, Craig, it's a remarkable location. It really is. You know, I grew up in the 1970s, you know, and sort of dined on a feast of documentaries from people like Malcolm Douglas and, you know, the great Harry Butler. And I was in Tasmania at the time, and the Kimberley just seemed so far away. You know, it just seemed like this absolute last frontier, not dissimilar to Cape York, I guess. And with an area twice the size of Victoria, you know, at a population of only 50,000 people, I thought this is a place I had to go and see. And, you know, I ended up going through school and doing the usual thing, and eventually got up there in my late teens, early 20s, and saw it for the first time. And travelling places like the Gibb River Road and the Great Northern Highway on the inland routes, it really opened my eyes to the beauty of this region. But it wasn't until only 15 years ago that I discovered it by coast. And that's an entirely different thing. You know, the coastline, the gorges, the breathtaking scenery, the pristine mangrove environments are just remarkable and add yet another layer to the complexity that is the Kimberley. And that's what I just find absolutely remarkable about it. Each time I go, I crave to return again and learn more about it and find out what's around the next bay or up the next river. You know, I could spend a lifetime exploring the region.
So this year would have been quite hard then, not getting up there, obviously.
Oh, look, I'll always remember 2020 is the year I never made it to the Kimberley, mate.
Yeah. And today you and Sandrine are both speaking about the Kimberley, and you're going to outline the big 5 of the Kimberley, or the top 5 reasons to visit, and I guess the 5 things that led you originally to fall in love with the Kimberley. So let's get into them. You're going to count them down from 5 to 1, and of course these are subjective. So, but as someone who's sailed the Kimberley coast over 100 times, I, for one, am more than happy to take your word, as there's arguably no one around that knows the area any better.
Yeah, totally agree with you, Craig. Completely subjective, and that's the wonderful thing about the Kimberley. There's something there for everyone. A husband and wife come to the Kimberley, they don't really know what to expect. You read enough about it, but you've seen photos, but each of them probably take away something different. And each of them would choose their own top 5. And so I've sort of put these together as a bit of an overview of the Kimberley, and hopefully a few people agree with me, and I'm sure some won't. But let's get into them, Craig, and count them down.
Excellent. So number 5 is the wildlife. So I mentioned earlier the wildlife is big. And is this one of the reasons that you love the wildlife and you put it in here?
Yeah, look, I think so. I think the wildlife is what you described. It's big, it's bold, it's in your face. I think a lot of comparisons are made between the Kimberley and Antarctica, and I think the wildlife is one that's similar. There's not a huge amount of diversity in either of those regions, but there's the iconic species, and the iconic species are obviously different for both locations. But we often see, the white-bellied seagulls, you've got your black-necked storks, these are the iconic bird species of the region. But the thing, as a member of the expedition team, that gets us really excited is we never know what we're going to see. And that's the key to it. You head out in the zodiacs and you never know what's around the next corner. What are you going to see around the next mangrove creek? How many crocs are we going to find? Are we going to see those big dominant males in King George or on the Hunter River? And I guess some of the lesser known ones are things like the marine mammals. A lot of people are surprised by the dolphins we see. We get bottlenoses, we get Australian humpbacks, we get snub fins, and we also get the occasional glimpses of the very shy dugongs in places like Kilama Bay and also Montgomery Reef. So they're really rewarding experiences. And speaking of mammals, if you are there at the right time of the year, then you've got a great chance to see one of the many humpback whales that are migrating through the region. So the Kimberley is regarded today as the largest population of migrating humpbacks. And what we see with them is a population that's numbering next year around about sort of 55,000. And that's an incredible number, because it's putting it, some people are saying that it might be back to sort of pre-whaling days. And those pre-whaling numbers, so thinking that whaling only finished in the 1960s, and we've gone back to numbers now that are in excess of 55,000 next year, then that's really quite remarkable. And they do enjoy coming into the Kimberley, and they come into the Kimberley to breed each year, and they're breeding each year and are able to utilise those calm waters, calm shallow waters in the Kimberley. And so it's a remarkable thing to be able to see.
Brilliant. And my video might have paused then, and it might be a good reminder to everyone that we are totally 100% live this evening. So if there are any hiccups with anyone's connection or anything like that, we will be sending out a recorded version of tonight's presentation to everyone tomorrow morning. So they will see that if anyone has any problems with connection or anything.
Well, I'm glad, Craig, because I thought it was just me there for a second. It's not in a major city, you don't have the best internet connection. I think it's just me, but I'm glad to know, yeah. So apologies for that, folks, but we will, as Craig mentioned, cover that tomorrow for you. So yeah, so for me, the whales are remarkable, Craig, and a great opportunity to see them in the Kimberley if you're there between sort of July and September time.
Okay, so that's the time to see them. And look, we use Zodiacs on board all of our expedition vessels, and we find them obviously the best to get to make landings either in icy conditions or rocky or sandy beaches, and also they're great for viewing the wildlife. Is that why we've chosen them on board?
Yeah, absolutely, Craig. You know, the Zodiac inflatables have been the cornerstone of the expedition industry since it started in the mid-1960s, you know, and since then they've proven to be the safest and most reliable vessel to transfer people ashore in some of the most remote and rugged regions. You know, they're fantastic at getting you up close to nature and the wildlife. You know, and a rubber inflatable boat. It's funny, you mentioned Zodiac, and for those of you that haven't travelled with us before, you might sort of conjure that image of that small little rubber inflatable you see someone paddling out to their boat in the marina on. Well, these are nothing like that. These are military-grade professional vessels. You know, they're designed for military operations, incredibly sturdy, incredibly stable, very comfortable, more comfortable than an aluminium dinghy in a choppy sea. And for particularly areas like the Kimberley, it's much easier getting in and out of a Zodiac on a rocky shore than it is doing that in an aluminium dinghy.
Brilliant. Okay, and that brings us to number 4, and you've chosen the islands. Now, the islands are not something that I immediately think of when I think of the Kimberley. So firstly, how many are there, and what's the attraction of going to the offshore islands in the Kimberley?
Yeah, look, I think I chose the islands because exactly what you said. It's one of those things that people don't think about when you go to the Kimberley. You know, the offshore islands, there's about 12,500 kilometres of coastline along the Kimberley, of which there's over 2,500 islands dotted there. And they're intricately entwined with the wildlife and the whole complex ecosystem that is the Kimberley. You know, often we're travelling along the coast and you'll be sort of halfway through a voyage and a lot of guests will be commenting that they don't see an enormous amount of bird life, you know, along the coast on the mainland. And it's true, you know, we don't see that. But what's remarkable is on the offshore islands, you know, and let's take the Lassipedes as a classic example. We visit the Lassipedes. They're 30 kilometres off the Dampier Peninsula and they are just covered in birds. You know, it's the world's largest population of brown boobies at 36,000 individuals. You've got 20,000 roseate terns. You've got lesser crested terns. You know, you've got Australian pelicans that breed there. And then towards later in the season, you've got a whole swathe of migratory shorebirds that come to these islands. And it's tantamount to the fact that the marine ecosystem is so rich that they're not making their way all the way to the mainland. They're just happy on these offshore islands, which are great breeding locations from them, safe from predators, and places like the Lassipedes have had predators removed from them, so the rats and the mice and the like, and now they're just teeming with wildlife, which makes them a really great experience to see. The one thing I like going there is you get that great cross-section of birds, pretty well guaranteed someone's going to get lucky that day. And then you've got the frigates, which are my favourite. So I love watching the frigate birds, the pirates of the sky, as they try to steal the food from the other birds and drink on the wing, which is a really remarkable thing to witness.
And so is it widely known as a sort of a birder's paradise? Do we get many twitchers, you know, booking Kimberley holidays to purely for the bird watching? Well, not purely.
Well, we do. You know, later on in the season in particular, once that West Australian and East Asian flyway is open and those migratory birds are coming down through that region all the way down into Roebuck Bay in Broome and that area, we do get a lot of people coming up that are interested in the birds, particularly late in the season, as I mentioned.
Okay, brilliant. And number 3, we've got the tide. So this is, I always love your stories of the tides up in the Kimberley, and you must never, I guess, get sick of showcasing this incredible natural phenomenon to our guests.
Yeah, you know, another leaf in the Kimberley book, I guess, as they say, and the tides are remarkable. You know, arguably the second largest in the world, a little spot called Newell Entrance in Collier Bay. They ranged 14 metres. You know, that's a remarkable amount of water that we see going in and out each day. So, you know, you've got the 2 horizontal falls, the only so-called horizontal falls in the world in Talbot Bay. Remarkable experience to see. the geology there and the scenery is beautiful, but the power of those rapids. And again, your Zodiac is the perfect choice for coming into those areas and that white water. So, the volume of water is impressive. Let's have a look at those. They're the outer gaps, what they call the wide gaps. So around about 35 metres wide, about 45 metres deep. The water in there is travelling up to about 18 knots. So if you did the quick calculation, it's something at around about 14.5 million litres of water moving through there a second.
Yeah, that's what I came up with too, Mick. So very good.
Excellent, mate. I'm glad we agree with that.
Incredible.
But it is, you go from Talbot Bay out to Montgomery Reef, and Monty for me is one of those remarkable things to see. We head out there on the tide, and that phenomenon of being able to watch the water come off the reef. So I got a little short video, and hopefully have a bit more success with this one playing as the water runs off the reef. At high tide, you've got 2 billion litres of salt water sitting on top of 400 square kilometres of reef system. And then as that rushes off, you get this magic cascading effect of the waterfall coming back on for that. So it's really quite an amazing thing to see. And guests are always in awe of it. And I must admit, in 15 years of being lucky enough to see it, I've never really found words adequate enough to describe that phenomenon. But those of you out there with us tonight who've seen it before will understand what I'm talking about when it comes to the wonders that is Montgomery Reef.
Everyone comes back talking about, don't they? And I love those shots with the Zodiac's in shot, and the same with Horizontal Falls, because it gives some scale to these incredible sites, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's the thing with the Kimberley, isn't it? Everything's on a grand scale. Everything's massive, which again is that comparison to Antarctica.
Fantastic. Okay, we're getting into the very upper echelon now in the top 5. So number 2. You've got Aboriginal culture, the art, the history, and this must be really a privilege to be able to showcase this part of Australia to people.
Yeah, it's a wonderful thing, the Kimberley. You've got one of the most ancient landscapes, and entwined in that is one of the most ancient cultures and the oldest continuing culture we have on Earth. And they leave all of their stories and traditions in the caves and in the rock art. And I think it's remarkable that the stories that are there, the lessons we can learn are fascinating. Like all regions in Australia, there is art that's specific to that area. So in the Kimberley, we see the Wandjina art, and we also see the enigmatic Gwion style, both unique to the Kimberley region, and there's no greater collection of artworks anywhere in the world. It's regarded as the greatest outdoor gallery on the planet. There's over 1 million art sites in the Kimberley alone. And so that's, we get to see half a dozen of them. And to think that over 425,000 square kilometres, there's over 1 million art galleries, it's a remarkable thing to know and to be very proud of as a country, of that culture and that heritage that we actually have. And, I've been lucky enough to work with the traditional owners now for over 10 years. And they've got this great ability to bring everything to life. And their laconic style and their knowledge is amazing to be part of. So we get our welcome to country ceremonies, which involve the ochre ceremonies. We go inside their traditional lands, welcomed, of course, as I mentioned, and hear those stories, and hear the stories of the individual paintings and the lessons that are up there on the wall. Because without those stories, they can just look like a painting on a wall. And that's not what it's about. It's rock art. It's the story behind that. It's a story in stone, and that's what brings it to life. So we get to experience that with the traditional owners of the land, and including in our ceremony, of course, is the classic smoking ceremony, which we all go through when we do leave the site as well.
Fantastic. As I said, what a privilege to be able to showcase that area and work with the local people doing it. Amazing.
Absolutely, Craig.
And number 1, you've chosen the rocks, or the geology of the Kimberley. So this is one thing that some of your colleagues, the geologists on board, will be very, very happy that you've chosen the geology or the rocks as number 1. So you must never get sick of waking up to views like this when you're on board up there.
Oh, absolutely not. And I guess as a marine biologist, I have to give one over to the geologists. But, they always say that everything, is dependent on the rocks. And in the Kimberley, it's that backdrop. It's that constant changing backdrop that you see, these beautiful sandstone structures that change in colour throughout the day. And even as you're driving up the gorges, different angles produce different images. And it's wonderful, the whole thing, 2 billion years in the making. And, we think about 2 billion years, we can't even fathom that length of time. Life on the planet's only been around for 500 million. So we're talking 4 times that age, which means there's no fossils in the Kimberley rocks because they're just too old. But they've been contorted, they've been convoluted, they've been eroded, you name it, to create this landscape. And I think it's always interesting when you look at geology, if we could have put a time-lapse camera that had been going for 2 billion years, it all makes sense to us, But when we just see the end result, it looks like this jumbled landscape, But geologists will pick the lines out of it and they'll tell you how it's all formed. And that's what I find remarkable about it, that wonderful backdrop of those sensational red rocks that we have in the Kimberley. And 2 billion years of formation, really complex. But I had a very good friend of mine once tell me the easiest way to remember how the Kimberley was formed. And he came up with this, which is that it was born by fire, bent by pressure, carved by ice, built by rivers, drowned by sea, shaped by tides, and is today burned by sun. And I think that's the best way to think of the Kimberley landscape.
Incredible. That sums it up so well, and very, very beautifully written by that friend of yours. So as well as you and Sandrine, or whoever's acting as an expedition leader up in the Kimberley, we have a team of experts which you've referred to throughout the presentation there. So would there be someone with an expertise in geology and marine biology, and is there a selection on each of the different cruises?
Yeah, Craig, I'm glad you mentioned that, because what's interesting is we're on as we travel down the coast, we're really lucky that we have a team of 13 naturalists, so that means we can have experts in all different fields, be that history, geology, anthropology, marine biology, environmental science, the like. But, one thing I can guarantee you about a Kimberley trip, mate, and that is that we'll be talking rocks. We'll always talk rocks in the Kimberley. And we do have a number of qualified geologists and have a lot of experience in the Kimberley region in amongst our team of naturalists.
Brilliant. And are you able to tell us the differences? So we have 2 main Kimberley expeditions, either north from Broome to Darwin or vice versa. Are you able to tell us what the differences are between those 2?
Yeah, look, it's a generally asked question, Craig, of what's the difference between the 2 itineraries. The key thing to remember is that both of them have the same number of destinations. Both of them have 1 day at sea. If you're going Darwin to Broome, you have the first day at sea. If you're going Broome to Darwin, it's the last day at sea. Now, they all visit the iconic locations of King George, Montgomery Reef, Talbot Bay, the Lassipedes. They both see Gwion and Wandjina style art. The only difference in destinations are if you go from Darwin to Broome, we take you to Wyndham. And in Wyndham, we give you the choice of 3 complimentary tours, which is the Ord River, El Questro, or the Bungle Bungles flight. Now, if you go from Broome to Darwin, we don't go to Wyndham. We go to a place called Careening Bay, which actually adds another element to the Kimberley and brings home the European history and mapping of the area. Because it's the place where in 1820, Philip Parker King careened the mermaid there. She was starting to take on a little bit of water. So took her ashore there in that shallow bay, and one of the men went out and carved the name of the boat and the year 1820 into the side of the Boab. And today that Boab is 3.5 metres wide and is on the National Heritage Trust list. So it's a great reminder of those heady days of discovery around Northern Australia.
Incredible. That is fantastic, Mick. And thank you so much for sharing those insights and sharing your Big 5. Honestly, we could listen to you for hours. But just to recap, the Big 5 was the wildlife of the Kimberley, the islands, the tides, the Aboriginal culture and art, and, of course, the rocks at number 1. So they are a brilliant top 5, so we can't thank you enough for that. It's now my great pleasure to introduce our second guest for the evening, Sandrine Erwin-Rose. Sandrine's going to give us some different expeditions and insights into some different itineraries that we have in 2021 in conjunction with National Geographic, which is really exciting. Welcome back, Sandrine.
Hi there, Craig. How are you? And hello to everyone watching.
And now you're the expedition operations manager for the Asia Pacific area, but part of your role, Sandrine, is still working on board, isn't it, as an expedition leader? So what do you love about the Kimberley?
Oh, Craig, being an expedition leader on board our ships is certainly the favourite part of my job, and being in the Kimberley is second to none. It's hard to choose a favourite, but having a science background, marine biology and zoology, it's the crocodiles and the turtles and the wildlife was certainly a big attraction for me. But I have to be honest, I fell in love with the rock art. For me, this has become a really, really special part of a Kimberley voyage. So it's really quite humbling standing there and as Mick was saying, just trying to imagine what the artist was feeling and thinking and what they were living all those years ago while they were creating this beautiful artwork.
Incredible. That kind of sums up the Kimberley, doesn't it? Or it sums up expedition cruising in a way that what your preconceived ideas or what your highlight was going to be when you boarded the expedition, you may come back with a totally different highlight or something else you've fallen in love with.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we've got some incredible, as I mentioned, National Geographic expeditions up in the Kimberley next year. So what are some of the differences in terms of the experience and the expertise that people enjoy on those particular expeditions?
Well, being an expedition cruise, as Mick mentioned, we always have our expedition team on board. So there's a picture of Harry here, who I'm sure many of our guests would recognise. And so we've got the full expedition team on board, but we've got a few extra things as well with our National Geographic Ponant expeditions. So, for example, we have our National Geographic expert who's on board, who's a regional expert and has worked with National Geographic. We have the National Geographic photographer. So this is separate to the photographer, the Ponant photographer that most people are used to. So they're there to help the guests to get the most out of their photography experience. So they run workshops and lectures to help everyone get the most out of their photography. Of course, we have a very full National Geographic documentary library. So at the end of a busy day, because it's an expedition after all, so we keep our guests very busy, they can enjoy hundreds of documentaries from the comfort of their stateroom. And of course, Ponant and National Geographic are really well aligned in terms of our philosophy with conservation and protection of the environment. So that matches up beautifully. And in fact, with Ponant, we've eliminated 80% of our single-use plastics on board our ships, and we have offset 150% of our CO2 emissions from each voyage. So that's something we have in common. And of course, there's always the support of the science and the exploration through the National Geographic Society as well. So that's always really good as well.
Fantastic. And what about with these 3 National Geographic and Ponant expeditions we have next year? You're going to go through some of the differences in terms of the itineraries. But here's a familiar face that hopefully is familiar to some of our viewers out there, Jason Edwards. I was lucky enough to travel with Jason earlier this year, actually. Can you introduce him and why is he making an appearance here tonight?
Well, we're very lucky to have Jason joining us next year on one of our Essential Kimberley voyages on the 29th of August. So he'll be on board, and obviously Jason has a wealth of knowledge and experience as a photographer. So his work's been featured in obviously National Geographic magazine, BBC Wildlife, The New Yorker, and he'll be on board to share his passion and run some really special masterclasses as well, so people can get the most out of their photography.
Fantastic. And what about some of the differences in terms of the itineraries that are different to the ones that Mick's already spoken about this evening?
Okay, sure. So the thing with our National Geographic voyages is that they're typically a little bit longer than our usual Ponant voyages. So for example, the Essential Kimberley that I've mentioned, so we've got 2 of those departures. And because we have a little bit of extra time, we've squeezed in some extra ports of call. So with this voyage, you don't actually have to choose Wyndham or Careening Bay. You get both. So there's no decision to make there. You have both of those included. So as Mick was saying, Careening Bay, you get to see this amazing boab and get to experience the maritime history, as well as in Wyndham. Obviously, you get one of the 3 complimentary tours which are included. So whether that be a flight over the Bungle Bungles or a gorgeous river cruise down the Ord River, or a trip out to Alquestra where you get to see the Cumberland Gorge, amongst other things.
Beautiful. And what about this, the 13-night voyage we have? This one leaves from Broome and travels all the way up to Darwin. And again, it's longer again, but this one's an interesting one because it's heading up to the Tiwi Islands. What can you tell us about this one?
I'm really excited about this voyage and really looking forward to it, actually. It has a big focus on art, on Aboriginal art. And so it's ideal for anyone who's wanting to learn more about ancient rock art as well as contemporary art from the Tiwi Islands. So we go to Biggie Island. So this is a shot of beautiful Biggie Island. It's the 2nd largest island in the Buccaneer Archipelago. It's got fantastic geology, and in amongst all those rocks and those crevices, you actually go exploring and find some spectacular rock art. As Mick mentioned, there's 2 types of endemic rock art in the Kimberley, the Wandjina and the Gwion. So we get to see both of those, as well as the contact rock art, which is much more modern, much newer, and depicts ships and people in those ships. And we're not actually quite sure who did that art, but I think that adds a big part of the mystery to the rock art.
Incredible.
And another thing is, in the Kimberley, of course, we have the sea turtles, and they breed all year round. So at Biggie Island, we're quite often lucky enough to see some tracks up on the beach of a female that's come up to nest during the night.
Wow. And
the Tiwi, so this is a really wonderful addition to what we otherwise have as a classic Kimberley voyage. So it's ideal for anyone who's wanted to visit the Tiwi or has some interest. The Tiwi, we actually visit both the islands, Bathurst and Melville Island. So we spend 2 days there and get to meet the locals and see the beautiful colour and learn about the culture and the language. The Tiwi people are a very unique people. They consider themselves Tiwi and quite separate to the mainland Aboriginal people.
Okay.
So we've got a little video to show. I'll just bring that one up. We seem to be... There we go. That should be playing soon. So this gives you a little bit of an idea of really the colour and the movement. We visit the art centre. You actually get to see the artists creating these beautiful sculptures and various artworks, and also the local museum, which has been recently refurbished, and that delves into the more modern part, the more recent history on the Tiwi Islands, which is also really, really interesting. And they do love their football, so that's a really, really important part of Tiwi Island culture.
Brilliant. Oh, there we go. Fantastic. So this would be, the ideal expedition for people who are looking to gain an even greater insight, I guess, into our Indigenous culture, but then they'll also benefit from the addition of having the National Geographic experts travelling with them.
Exactly. It's the best of both worlds, Craig. So for those who appreciate ancient as well as contemporary art, and there's also the opportunity for guests to purchase the local artwork, which also supports the local artists and the community. So that's a really important thing that we bring to the communities as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for those insights, Sandrine. I'll just let everybody know now that what voyages we've got up there in 2021. So I can't thank Mick and Sandrine enough. They've certainly got me dreaming of a Kimberley expedition in 2021, and hopefully some of you as well. But next year, for the first time, we'll actually have 2 of our brand new state-of-the-art explorer vessels up in the Kimberley, Le Belleau and La Perouse. They both feature a private balcony with in every stateroom and suite. There's 2 restaurants, there's a full-size theatre, and several lounge areas to relax in, including a world-first blue eye underwater lounge. There's a spa, fitness centre, and a swimming pool on each of these ships, and that's a great way to cool off after a big day of exploring. And interestingly, the only 2 ships in the Kimberley with a pool on board. So it's a great place to relax and enjoy a drink in the evening. You can enjoy that around the pool or anywhere on board as part of the open bar policy that we have. And then at the rear of the ship, we have this fantastic marina platform, which enables very, very easy access to the Zodiacs that Mick was speaking about earlier on in the presentation. So they're the ships that will be operating up in the Kimberley in 2021. And I just wanted to touch on some of the pricing that we have available as well. We have a total of 16 departures, so 13 Ponant departures and 3 Ponant and National Geographic departures in 2021 from April to September, and all with varying degrees of availability left. So these are just an example of a couple of the prices that we have available. So our iconic Kimberley, which is 10 nights. This particular one was in April, so from Broome up to Darwin. But as I said, there's availability across the season. This one's just under $13,000 per person. And if we look at the 2 different National Geographic voyages that we had, the 13-night trip, the Broome to Darwin, the last one that Sandrine spoke about that's visiting the Tiwi Islands and Big Islands, this is $14,060 per person. And then the last one, we have 2 of those 12-night or 13-day expeditions, the Essential Kimberley with National Geographic from Darwin to Darwin. So these are the ones where you can visit both Wyndham and Careening Bay. And these ones start at $14,365 per person. And all these prices include a special offer for this evening, a 10% roadshow discount on any of the 3 National Geographic departures in 2021, and all of the Ponant Kimberley 2021 departures have a 5% roadshow discount, and they're both using the special code BIG5. We're extending that 5% roadshow offer to any new Ponant bookings made in the next 10 days to any of our destinations on all 7 continents. So the BIG5 offer is combinable with our Ponant bonus discounts, and they ensure that you're rewarded for booking early. We never have any last-minute discounts, and in the 3 years we've operated up in the Kimberley, we've actually never had a spare cabin, so it's definitely worth booking early for a destination like the Kimberley. I hope you're all enjoying yourselves, and some of you are about to enjoy yourselves even more because we have some giveaways. We actually have some questions that we're going to ask, and you're going to answer these using the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So we've got 3 questions. Each of the winners, so it's the first correct answer through, will win a case, 6 bottles of Charles Heidsieck champagne. And this is the champagne that you can enjoy anytime on board a Ponant expedition as part of our open bar. We'll announce the winners in the follow-up email, which is coming around tomorrow morning, as with potentially 3,000 answers coming through. I'm going to need the team's help to ensure we choose the correct answers. So let's get into our first question. According to Mick, how many humpback whales will migrate to the Kimberley next year? This is an approximate answer. How many humpback whales will migrate to the Kimberley in 2021? Fantastic. I can already see lots and lots of answers coming through. So we'll get to those tomorrow morning, or we'll figure it out tonight, and we'll get to those tomorrow morning. So thanks to everyone who's getting involved in the chat box there. There are literally hundreds of answers coming through, so well done. And congratulations to the first person through there. Let's go to the second question. And the second question is, what are the names of the 2 Tiwi Islands you can visit with National Geographic and Ponant in 2021? So the name of the 2 Tiwi Islands that Sandrine mentioned on that 13-night expedition we have in 2021. Just waiting for some of the answers to come through, and there we go. Lots and lots of correct answers coming through there. So good luck to everyone that's had a go at the second question. Now, let's get on to the third and final question, and then we're going to get into our Q&A session where we'll answer some of the questions that have come through during the presentation. But before that, our third question is, Mick and Sandrine have completed how many Kimberley Coast Expeditions between the two of them. This one, you have to go right back to the beginning of the presentation. I did mention this in the introduction, so hopefully all of you were in by then and heard this one, but it is a lot. That's the only clue I'll give. But how many Kimberley Coast Expeditions have Mick and Sandrine completed between them? Okay, lots of answers coming through there as well. Fantastic. So thank you so much for all of your participation. We really, really appreciate it. Now, we might bring Mick and Sandrine back into the room now where we go through some of the questions that have come through during the presentation. Welcome back, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Hopefully you weren't the first ones through with the answers there.
You told me I wasn't allowed to enter the competition.
Exactly right. Not open to non-employees, unfortunately. Okay, we have some questions that have come through now. So let me get to the first one. Okay. Question 1 from Karen Taylor. What's the best time of the year for whale watching? We might throw that over to you, Sandrine.
Well, the whale watching is certainly a really great highlight of any Kimberley voyage, and basically because, as Mick was saying, the whales are coming up to migrate to give birth or to mate. So around that July, August is an ideal time to be coming if you're really, really focused on the whales. But there's certainly plenty of other things to see and experience the rest of the time as well.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. And the second one is from Anita Henry. Do we have an option to visit Mitchell Falls? Mick.
Thanks, Craig, and thanks, Anita, for that question. Yeah, look, on every voyage we have that opportunity. When we're at the Hunter River, we have an additional helicopter flight available for guests who'd like to travel to the Mitchell Falls. And on most days, you can do the Mitchell Falls helicopter as well as enjoy a Zodiac tour on the Hunter River.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you. That answers that one. And question 4 for, and we do get a lot of first-time cruisers, I guess, for want of a better word, that go on an expedition, because our expeditions go to areas that really you can't access any other way. But we've got a question here from Karen Pappenfuss, and the question is, what's the seasickness like? Is there much seasickness happening up in the Kimberley?
Oh, look, Craig, I guess that's a general question that a lot of people ask, and particularly whenever you're going on any sort of boat, it's a different motion on every vessel that you travel on. The good thing with the Kimberley voyage is it's coastal cruising. We're rarely going offshore, and some people are more susceptible to seasickness than others. The thing to remember is you're travelling on a state-of-the-art vessel. You're travelling on a vessel equipped with Rolls-Royce stabilisers, so they're the best on the planet. So if you're going to choose a vessel to go on that you might think you could possibly get seasick, then you're choosing the right vessel to go on with the most modern that's available.
Brilliant. And our last question, just in the interest of time, we've got a lot of questions that have come through, but we have got to limit it, unfortunately. But our last one's from Esther Johnson, and she's asked, Sandrine, I'll throw this one to you. Is there an opportunity to swim on our Kimberley voyages?
Absolutely, Craig, but we do restrict it to the swimming pool.
Great. Okay.
Obviously, as Mick was saying, with our beautiful wildlife, it's we do like to keep our distance, and so therefore there is no swimming in the ocean. We'll stick to the swimming pool for the swimming.
Fantastic. So we're taking 150 people up at the Kimberley. We'd prefer to bring 150 back as well, right?
Thanks. I don't want the paperwork.
Excellent. Well, really, that brings us to the end of the event. I can't thank you, Mick and Sandrine, enough for being part of this evening. The insights that you share on this incredible destination are fantastic. And as I said earlier, we'd love to listen to you for longer and longer, but I guess we'll have to get on board and listen to you up in the Kimberley next time.